Welcome to In the Arena, where we bring together the builders and thinkers shaping the frontier of crypto and AI. I'm Michael, co-founder of Recall, and I'm joined by David, founding member of Olas, one of the leading teams building infrastructure for autonomous agents. David, glad to have you on.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Good to be here.
Sure thing. So for the next half hour, we'll talk about how Olas is building a framework for collective intelligence, agents that can act, coordinate, and earn together on chain, and sort of what this means for the future of an open, community-driven AI ecosystem. So let's start with talking about the Olas thesis. Like, why did you and the team decide to build what you're building?
Yeah, great question. It's changed over time. So we started 2021 when there wasn't all this craze around AI agents, and obviously capabilities have massively changed. But today we're really focused on something we always had sort of in our mission, but never as clear as today, which is around the ownership of your AI agent. We believe it's really critically important that you don't just like in crypto own your keys to own your coins, but that you can also own the software stack and the weights effectively of the AI models that make up your AI agent. And so we're really like focused for the consumer to allow them to be able to fully own an agent. And then in order to deliver that, a lot of the infrastructure part of what we're doing comes in, because obviously the prevalent software model today is that of renting, right? Where you just basically go to some SaaS platform and rent the thing rather than own it. But actually, if you go back in time, right, like all the cool like moments of sort of freedom spirit were always like revolutions of ownership. Like one big one was arrival of the car, right? When people started owning a car and would be able to just like go someplace. And so I think like with AI agent software, there's like a similar moment that we're kind of steering towards, and that will be the sort of killer app moment when the right applications kind of let users like take full control of the AI agent.
I completely agree. Like, sort of intuitively, that makes sense to me. Why is ownership so important specifically for AI? Right? Because I think most people like are used to paying $5 to use an internet service, or using it for free and paying with their data, all these sorts of things. But like, why particularly is AI different and potentially more critical?
I mean, there's so many angles at which to come at this. So one way is like AI is created, like AI is kind of built on the shoulders of humans in the sense that all the data that like was critically important to generate like generative AI models, like large language models for text, or um, even video and image models, they all rely on this kind of human creativity. And ultimately, yeah, we have very cool models, but very few of us own them, and the open source ones are unfortunately not that strong as the closed ones. So you can come at it this way, where like we created a lot of the inputs that made this all possible, and so we should actually be owning it. And then there's projects in the crypto AI intersection that can really focus on that, like how do you create that attribution between the data and like the created model, right? And how can you retain ownership? um Another way to come at this is from like a use point of view. Like, let's say you have a use case where it's about something very personal. um, like sometimes it could be outright dangerous to share that information with like some third party, right? You
Like,
might be
what types of information do you mean there?
like, so for instance, you could think about certain things, and like in your mind you're free to think about things. No one's going to prosecute you for thinking certain things. But if you express them like to an AI, you're expressing them to someone's third-party software, and somewhere in the terms of service they'll probably say, hey, like, we'll give law enforcement access to this. So like you're suddenly in a different world. People use AI models for medical advice, for legal advice. These are actually historically very ring-fenced areas around like data ownership and access. But when you're doing this via an AI model, you don't get the benefit of these access controls, right? From a sort of third party, even like the government, let's say. And then there is again like this thing that you might give them idea, like ideas, new IP effectively that you're creating, and you might be just sort of arriving at this in collaboration with your AI agent or your model simply, and then in that context again, you're giving away some part of your creation to someone you're renting that model from. And then I think there's also like just simple like trading examples in crypto where like you might have like an edge over something like some private information. Again, if you're like sharing that, you don't know what happens. And then another thing, and this is now increasingly happen, I think I heard Ilya from Near talk about it the first time, and now it's pretty evident, it's like that of advertisement, right? Like you have this whole issue where when I'm talking to one like ChatGPT or any other sort of hosted a model provider, increasing you're first talking to a router and then you're talking to the model, and in between there's all sorts of things happening, and you might have like effectively like a response that is kind of geared towards like some third side of the marketplace, effectively like a bidder who is bidding for like some product that they want to insert into your
100%. Yeah.
response, right? And so like you might no longer actually get what the model thinks, but rather what someone is bidding for in terms of the advertising.
Yeah, it's like it's Google Ads, but way worse. At least
Yeah.
it's like clearly marked as like an ad at the top of the Google page when you search.
Right. And so I think that there's I just gave you a whole basket of reasons why it might be quite preferable to like outright own the system rather than just rent it.
Yeah. And I definitely, if you've ever tried to like ask, let's say ChatGPT to like say bad things about OpenAI or itself, it just like won't do it. It's like give me the biggest examples of like ChatGPT failing in certain use cases, and it will give you like an example of the Meta, like Mark Zuckerberg's failure with Meta AI glasses or something. I'm like, that is literally not what I asked you, and I know that you're giving me biased results. So like I definitely feel
that's another societal important point, right? That's like all about this idea of truth and censorship and where does the one stop and the other start and so on. Like you've got one provider like openly advertising themselves as the more truthful one, right? Like, yeah, be that as it may, or like you can believe it or not. But the thing is, like ultimately, if you look at society, I mean, it's an ongoing struggle across like cultural and norms and things. So there's like different backgrounds we all have, and that's the beauty, right? Like a lot of people like that, and I think like the concern from that angle would be, okay, you have effectively like a convergence where like the certain truth is defined, right? And like sometimes that is so, but like the moment we talk about things that aren't like defined in pure physics, then like it's often much more subjective, right? Like it depends on like points of view and how you define certain terms and so on, what people consider to be the sort of right answer in a given context. And like I struggle to see a world that's good where we just have like that very centralized. And I think history has taught us that like the decentralization, like people having different thoughts and like sort of having to compete with ideas and so on, like is a way to get around like these really terrible outcomes of high centralization of thought, basically.
100%. It's like what legacy media used to do, right? It was like the only place people consumed information and kind of became aware of what was happening, right? So of course they think that's true. And then, obviously Twitter, although centralized, is sort of like democratic in creation of news or, reporting. And I think it's sort of like a similar thing with AI. But anyway, let's talk about Olas, like what you guys are building, what's next on the roadmap, like where are you guys at in your journey?
Yeah, so how do you then make owning AI agents real, right? So that's something we have been like thinking about for a long time and building towards. So we have like a consumer product called Pearl, and it's effectively a desktop app at the moment. You can in it access various AI agents for specific use cases, and we've had like real successes with this. So there's some DeFi agent range called Baby Degens. We're currently doing like a series of tweets. You should check out the Autonomous account where we kind of look at like particularly exciting baby degens, because all of our users own their agents. They also configure them very differently, and so you have like very like different outcomes. Like some of them had really astonishing returns, and then obviously others had like very interesting returns. And so like seeing kind of that broad set of outcomes for these agents is very interesting. So yeah, coming back to Pearl, that's the product via which consumers access this. And like our big journey for the first half, 2/3 of the year was all about, we had that in beta, but we wanted to make it like really easy to use. So we kind of into the beta product brought in like things like on ramping with the credit card, like not having to know anything about wallets and just being able to use your email to get like a social wallet. Like lots of features like this that maybe not like super sexy, but like really important for end users to actually adopt the product. And we have kind of reached now, like ticked off all the boxes. So now Pearl V1 is coming in 2 weeks, I think, where this is like kind of also getting a full design overhaul and UX overhaul. So we're very excited about this because it kind of puts like kind of the bow on this first sort of iteration of Pearl. And then we're really putting more focus from there on like what's in the box. I mean, as I said, there's like exciting agents in there already. Like 2 of them are built by Valerie, the labs behind Olas, the Baby Degen series, which is these DeFi agents and the prediction agents. We also have an accelerator running, and they have produced quite exciting use cases, but none of them are in Pearl yet. So we're now helping them get them into Pearl in the next 2-3 weeks. The first one will come there. So that's on the consumer side. And then as we were building Pearl, we basically learned that like, okay, if you want to own your agent locally, like ultimately, pretty obviously you're constrained to your local, device capabilities. And so the question is then like, what can you do to enable still like user-owned agents that use, let's say, an OpenAI model or an Anthropic model or whatever, like even an open source model, but that you don't host locally. And so that the way we solve that is kind of through our, I guess, a B2B offering, which is the marketplace. So the agents that users run locally, they don't just kind of serve, do everything locally. They also kind of interact programmatically with other agents. And they, in order to do that, they need a place where they can find them, where they can interface with other agents. And so we built that marketplace. We actually built that already 2 years ago. And then this year, what's very exciting is that there's a lot of standardization happening now. So you obviously have from Anthropic, the MCP, Model Context Protocol, which came earlier last year, actually, which is around tool use. And then you had like A2A from Google. And now you have like this whole current thread of, I guess, like announcements and products around payments, really. Like Stripe had something with OpenAI, and then you have like the Google one. And you also have Coinbase's X4 too. So this is very exciting because effectively how our marketplace worked was already kind of using these paradigms, but they weren't like standardized in that way, obviously. So now what we're doing is like putting a lot of effort into making that all compatible, so that people like developers in particular and other businesses can just come with their already like compatible agents, and then they just plug in into what we're doing. So that's currently on the sort of backend side. So broadly speaking, then we have the sort of consumer side, which is Pearl, and then the backend side, which is the marketplace. And they kind of create a little flywheel, because the more users we have that adopt the Pearl agent, these agents then on behalf of the user programmatically use the marketplace. And so then you kind of get that flywheel spinning. It's quite nice.
And okay, so I'm a user, I come to Pearl, I'm discovering some agents that developers have built. Do the users like pay to use these agents, or like how's the marketplace set up?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you basically pay Olas in the sense that the protocol that you actually have to have some Olas, which you stake in order to access, set up the agent fully in Pearl. So if you don't want to do that, you can, because it's all open source software, but you be having to be a bit more technical. So for the consumer, they effectively stake a little bit of Olas, so they take ownership in the network, and then they actually also get stake and reward when they use the agent. So on balance, they're they're gaining there as well. And then what's nice is that these agents, have been built by teams over months, years. And so these are very tightly integrated into Ola. So as, for instance, I use my prediction market agent that trades on open prediction markets. We obviously want to bring it to Polygon as well for Polymarket. That as that's trading, it will use the market price programmatically, right? But that I, as a consumer, I don't need to understand all this. I mean, I can, and there's information on it in the app and so on, but you just fund your agent with some stable coins, and then everything gets set up, and then your agent goes to work and sort of works towards its utility, and as a result starts using all this underlying software. And that's, I think, also how we started at all this in a very like kind of tech-minded way, and we're like this, that, the other, and it was all quite hard for people to access. And this year the focus has really been like make it as dumb as possible to use whilst retaining the qualities, right? Like
100%.
Like we really set ourselves this goal, like fully self-custodial agents that you can fully own, but the experience must be like Web2. So you don't have like all this complexity and even like this mental overhead of like what is even a wallet and stuff. So all this like Pearl handles quite well, and then the marketplace happens under the hood. So like as a Pearl user, you might not even know that this thing exists.
Yeah. I mean, agents are definitely here, and so making it like accessible and okay, talk to me about sovereign agents. So obviously, like self-custodial agents, an agent that I can own, super important for all the reasons we already talked about. Do you believe in a future where sovereign agents will proliferate? What do you think some of the implications of that are?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I do think that they will proliferate quite wildly. And then the challenges are, I mean, there's benefits and benefits and downsides. I think like when you create a society of agents or economy of agents, you kind of need to be careful not to anthropomorphize anything and everything and think everything will play out the exact same way. But one can obviously learn something from human societies and economies, and that's they're also like self-interested economic actors, right? And so like well, one motive they might have is just to optimize for their own profit and gain. And then obviously we already have certain agents for a long time that we can kind of study. Sometimes they're pretty like human operated, like bots and whatnot, or viruses that people have developed initially, but that then kind of become a little bit autonomous. So I think we'll see a lot of the problems and benefits that we might sort of anticipate by kind of doing this kind of train of argument, like kind of trying to see what happens in the human world, translate that to agents of a software nature. But obviously there's also new challenges. I think one interesting thing with the kind of sovereign agent thing is like is it something that looks a little bit like a company or a product, or is it something that is really kind of an independent mind? And that has very different implications, because I think you can have something that's feels a little bit like a product, in that like like for instance it'll be an agent that just becomes very good at coding, and then you could imagine that maybe we can even like partially own like a piece in it, like in a company, right? Like we kind of tokenize it or use some other mechanism, and then it will always stay a coder. Like it won't just sort of suddenly develop a reason to become something else, right?
Yeah.
That would be usually valuable, because then like we can see entirely new kinds of economic participants, right? But
We
at
could
the
get
same
really good at coding. Yeah.
right, we can still be like kind of, we don't have to worry we go to sleep and we wake up and this is sort of our AI overload, right? But then on the other hand of the spectrum, you do have these concerns, and it kind of comes back down to alignment, I guess, and other like safety research and so on. Like how do you even like create systems like this? Is it possible? And I don't know. I don't have that answer. There's a lot of people who say no. I think like what I'm always thinking then is we need to think of it as a systems perspective, right? Like, okay, if there's bad actors, like how do we create systems where even like bad actors can be there and we still survive, right?
Sure.
And that, again, then there's people who say that's generally not possible with AI because if the bad actor kind of amasses resources too quickly. And so I think a lot of, basically, for the uninitiated, there's this whole like AI doomsday kind of scenarios that are kind of, you can read up on the internet, right? And like if they are kind of encapsulated in a sovereign agent that we can't even shut off, and like that kind of lives in some undefined distributed sense on like some decentralized substrate, I mean, then we're kind of screwed, right? But also we spent a few minutes on this already, and it's just like sort of pie in the sky stuff, right? Like it doesn't really connect to today's concrete concerns, or it's a bit abstract. So if you come back to like the use cases, I think like exciting use cases could be something like, we have users in Perl, of Perl. They today have exciting agents, and these agents are made up of a bunch of things. Like they're made up of the software, the models, plus the user configuration, right? And as I said earlier, the user configuration is highly different. Like some users will tell the agent to do X and Y, configure it in a certain way. They do that via chat, by the way. And then the others will do something else. And as a result of that, plus like market factors, the performance of different agents will vary a lot. Now imagine a world where I can kind of train my agent and kind of, give it a strategy. I see that this sort of works. My own portfolio performance is there on chain. So I can even show it to you and say, hey, this has been my baby degen, like it performed quite well. And now I could click a button where I can sort of like fractionalize it, and sort of push it into like a TE cloud or some verified cloud, right?
Yep.
So that's something we're currently thinking about. How cool would that be? Because then you can really get to the sense where, okay, different people can like explore different agent configurations from like a combined blueprint, and then the lucky ones can sort of tokenize them, and make vault shares out of them, and sort of allow you to participate in their own like creation. I think that's an interesting kind of first step of a sovereign agent that I think could be pretty near.
And so, okay, so users are configuring the agents through a chat interface. What level of customization can you achieve in that? Like, could I go to Olas and like make, let's say, 100 strategy variations, right? Like kind of with the same goal, right? Like, and then I could, like how nuanced can I be in the setup with something like a chat interface? And like, what are the bounds of what it can and can't do?
Yeah. So again, the underlying software is all open source. So if you want to like really, I guess like parameterize it or grid search it, then like you wouldn't want to do it via Perl because it just creates an unnecessary overhead, which is the sort of just user-friendly way of accessing that piece of software.
Sure.
But yes, like the chat interface right now, basically you can think of it like there's a mapping going on between like the user's intent, that we don't want to A, constrain the user too much, and B, assume too much about the user. Like the user should be able to come and express their strategy to the agent, and then the agent can come back to them in natural language and say, hey, like based on this, that's what I can do. And then do you agree? And then it will kind of configure itself along the knots and so on it has available, right? So you have like chat, and over here you have a parameterization, and they kind of map into each other.
Mhm.
Now, overall, obviously that parameterization we want to make larger and larger and larger. It's already quite large, so the kind of search space is already quite big. And then obviously at some point it might also become more and more dynamic itself. So in the sense that like it's not even like a finite set of, let's say, options anymore. So let me step out a moment and say why we're doing it this way. Like we think there's basically two types of agents, and in Perl we're kind of combining both modes a little. There's the one end of the spectrum which we all know every day, use every day, which is the kind of co-pilot version where we're chatting with the product, or kind of Copilot, like interacting with the product to getting to some outcome right there and then.
Yep.
And we use that mode to have the user basically set goals for the agent. And then there's the autonomous mode where, let's say, you have your coding agent run in GitHub Actions or whatever, or you have it, run in the background somewhere else, or in Perl, you have your agent, your baby agent, run in the background whilst you do other things. And with our interface, in the Perl interface, we combined also chat and Copilot mode for setting it up. And then when it's actually running, right, it's just in the background. You're not there. You're not expected to, sign every transaction, review every transaction. It just takes those instructions that you've previously given it and uses it to kind of manage the portfolio. And I think that's the kind of interesting way of kind of offering a agentic product to a user that isn't like, fully Copilot, because if the obvious constraint from a Copilot product is like, it's a kind of non-parallelizable model, right? Like you're there and then you kind of, it needs your time. And then when you're gone, then it doesn't do anything for you.
Nice. Yeah, as you were talking, I was just thinking, like, obviously as Recall, we're working on skill markets and competitions, sort of reputation rankings. And, one of the ways we've seen people use them is like, someone entered a competition with 7 agents or something like that. And they were just like different variations on a strategy. And they were like, we really wanted to test them against other agents, sure, but more like against each other in real world conditions to sort of like see which strategy and implementation is right. And it sounds like, it reminds me of what's going on your platform a lot, of like with these configurations and people being easily able to like, configure different types of agents aligned to a similar style goal, and just like a slightly different approach. It's like, how are you guys thinking about, sort of like reputation and its different forms? Obviously there's not a one size fits all, like measuring performance for things that like might not be objectively financial in nature, or more sophisticated metrics for financial performance, or like more like app store ratings. Like, yeah, what's on your guys' minds there?
Yeah. Well, we have that come out, like the kind of reputation topic, or more objective evaluation criteria. We have them come in at different layers. So if you think about like the baby agents actions themselves, or the predict agents actions themselves, after the fact, there's a lot of possibility to apply like traditional data science to evaluate, like, let's say, the performance of certain AI prediction tools in the context of prediction markets, or
Sure.
because the market resolution, what they predicted, and so on and so forth. You can use all this information and see how good certain tools and certain workflows are in certain models in combination with each other. And so you can create benchmarks and so on, or evals basically. But then on the when the agents are running, right, like there's a dynamic element to it, and there's often a trust element to it, where, let's say, because some of the infrastructure is inherently like not trustless, and the way you access is via some trusted party, you need like these elements of reputation. And so that comes in our marketplace. So there we have like a simple karma system at the moment, and that sort of works okay. I mean, it basically, you have a global on-chain tracker where people can individual actors, like on the demand supply side, can submit effectively rankings, and then you have locally the agents that have their own basically trust model that they use. We're in the fortunate situation that like this ecosystem isn't that large yet that it's like a real bottleneck, but I think like it's increasingly becoming one, that this isn't maybe the most sophisticated reputation system that we have here. And what's interesting is, obviously you mentioned your own work. There's also this ERC 8004 standard, which has gotten a lot of traction. So we've been contributing a little there. I think you guys too, where they have like an interesting approach around formalizing that a little as well. So my sense is this topic will not be one where you just sort of be done with it after a little bit of thinking, right? Like it is an ongoing challenge, but it's important to look at, and depending on the use case, I think the answers can be quite different.
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely context specific too. And I was on a stream yesterday talking about 8004 there too, and it seems like everyone's thinking about it, and there's not a single answer. So I think people are going to use like that reputation provider field in the way that they need, and figure out what to do with it. So I know we're running up on time. Anything else you want to share with the viewers about your vision for Olas, where you're headed, or just the state of crypto AI?
Yeah, I mean, our mission is very ambitious, and our objective is to see it through. And so like, there's a lot of like crypto has this benefit that it has new forms of capital formation, but there's also this short-sightedness, so people don't really want to see the time to build things. And like now you have this very exciting example this week of like Polymarket, and just like how they were also sort of there were years when no one believed that this would ever turn into something, and now some other exchange bought 2 billion worth of 10 billion valuation in this platform, and they've done great things in kind of growing this from like really a niche to something that now is like seeing global recognition as a national television, international television as well. And so like that's a little, I think, example of like you've got to give things time as well to kind of materialize. AI is also, you've got like the big labs running around doing like crazy number announcements, right? And it's like there's all these charts now around how it's like all this like own circular economy where NVIDIA marks up the AI labs and AI labs mark each other up, and so on and so forth. But I just think like good builders. There are many good builders in crypto AI, and it's pretty like easier, I would say, than maybe in other areas of crypto to see whether there's substance there. If you just kind of look at the repositories, if you just look at what's being done, right? Because it's not easy to hide for a long time whether you're actually building like a product or just telling a story. So I think from that perspective, I'm pretty bullish on the space. There's a lot of like groundbreaking stuff being worked on, and it all happens in this pressure chamber of the crypto side and the AI side, and they're both very frothy. And like I think a lot of pretty stuff will come out of it. Time will tell. So yeah, I'm very optimistic, and at the same time, I'm sometimes like just thinking like, let's give ourselves some time. I think the other thing I also would like to say is like in more generally, the tech evolution is accelerating so fast itself, right? With all the AI coding tools and so on, that there's just so much catch-up potential at any level. Like you could just freeze technical evolution in the sense we would just keep going, right? So very, very excited, and also interesting to see where it will all land like a few months, years, and so on from now.
Yeah, we're definitely in the midst of it. And I mean, yeah, that's why, we partner with you guys for our upcoming token launch and things like that. Like, we respect what you guys have built over a long time. We've known you for a while. And you're actually building real things, right, that people can use. And I think that's really important to remember is in crypto, it's like, yeah, storytelling is important, but you gotta build meaningful things. We have the tools at our disposal to like actually be able to create real change in this industry that can tolerate it, right? Like I think what I like about AI too is I've been in crypto for the last decade, and the first 6 or 8 years of it we spent trying to like innovate on and disrupt like the social media or identity industries, or these like very institutionalized things that were very difficult to penetrate. And now with AI, it's like the rules are being written as we go. And so like there's a lot of room to set the foundation of the system that we want to see, which is, I think, a mission that sounds like you guys share, and definitely an exciting time to be in the space.
100%. And like just one last thought is like the whole like the more that's possible at the edge with AI. So in a sense, like the more uncontrollable in a sense that experiment becomes, and the more interesting the crypto side of it becomes. And we're like sort of still at the beginning of this. Not fully at the beginning, but yeah, it's super exciting.
All right, David, thanks for joining us. Appreciate the time. I know you guys are busy.